Hi, today we are going to be replacing the FeRAM save chip in a copy of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 for the Sega Genesis. In order to complete this project, you will need the following things. A copy of Sonic 3 for the Sega Genesis with a bad save chip. You will need a replacement chip. I found mine on eBay. I'll leave the name of the chip in the description of the video so you know what to search for on there. You need one of these game bit screwdrivers. I found this on Amazon. Specifically, you need the bigger game bit because there are two different sizes. The one that I have has a removable bit that has both sizes, but you need the bigger size. You need a soldering iron, also found this on Amazon. Just like a cheap one, doesn't have to be like crazy. You need some solder, also on Amazon. You need desoldering wick because you will have to remove the old chip from the cartridge to install the new one. So that's all the stuff that you need to complete the job. I do also recommend some kind of like eye protection and like a face mask or something. You know, soldering does produce fumes that are not great to breathe in. And while I know the protection that I have here isn't of the highest quality, I still feel that it's better than nothing. So I think it's important to do what you can. Cool. So with all that, let's get started on the project. Okay, so getting into the actual project, you're going to start with the cartridge here, and on the back there are two game bit screws that you want to undo with your game bit screwdriver. You set those aside. And then once those are loose, that will just come away and you'll be able to get to the board. And on the front of the board, the chip that we're looking at is the one labeled RAMTRON. This one right here. And if you look on the back, the pins go through holes on the board and they come out the other side. And these are the pins that we're going to desolder. These ones right here. Okay, so once your soldering iron is heated up and ready to go, what you want to do is you want to take the soldering wick and you want to press it against the pins and kind of just like keep it close there. And then you'll take your soldering iron and you'll want to touch that to the desoldering wick, which will then result in the solder that is on those pins kind of getting scooped up into the solder wick. We have to go ahead and do this for every pin that this chip connects to. Kind of go down the line and get them all. You might have to use a different part of the solder wick after a certain point because it does get, full of solder and it becomes less effective, so you just have to, move it around. So at this point, you can see me kind of like wiggle the pins around to kind of determine whether or not I've gotten all of the solder off. I do feel most of the pins kind of wiggle around. So at this point, I try to take the chip out of the cartridge. I give it like a considerable pull, but nothing too crazy. You don't want to force it. Only to then kind of realize that one of the pins potentially does still have solder on it. So I go back in and kind of determine which one it is and desolder all of that. Okay, so once everything is desoldered, the pins should now be loose. So if you give it just like a small tug, it should come away from the main board. And then you want to take the new one. When I tried to put it in the holes here, the pins were actually a little wider than where the holes are on the board. So I spend a few minutes here kind of gently bending them into shape so they would then fit onto the board. Nothing crazy. I was, very, very gentle, very soft touch, just making sure that those all line up so you can get it through the holes on the board to the other side. Okay, so once you have the new chip fitted into the board and all of the pins are all in their corresponding holes, it is time to solder them. So this was honestly at first a little intimidating, but ended up being a lot less trouble than I expected. I go ahead and I solder a point on the board that I'm not sure actually means anything, but it looks like it ended up becoming desoldered over the course of the removal of the chip, so I just wanted to resolder it just to make sure there's no issues. So at this point, you kind of just go down the line and solder each little pinpoint. Eventually I kind of like get into a flow of it and just like bang them out all really quickly. I kind of found that a good strategy was on either side of the pin, you'd put solder on the one side and the soldering gun on the other one, and then when they touch together with the pin in the middle, the solder kind of just melts directly in place right where you need it to. So that was kind of the best way that I found to do this step. But yeah, it's ended up being very simple. The desolder was harder than the solder. Once you finish the first side, you want to go ahead and just continue to the other side and just essentially do the same thing. At this point, I, double check and make sure all of the pins are properly soldered down. And then once you determine that they are all soldered and good to go, you want to fit the board back into the cartridge and then screw those screws back on. And of course, now we have to test it. So here I am putting the cartridge into my Sega Genesis. I let it boot up, run through the intro of the game here. You can see there's not currently a save. Okay, so we get to the point where it creates the save, and I make sure to completely power down the console and also pull out the cartridge so we could show that the RAM chip is keeping the save independent of the power from the console. So when we turn it back on here, we can see the save. Yep, so that is everything. That's how you complete that project. If you have any questions or anything, if anything was unclear, leave a comment and I'll try to answer it the best that I can. Thank you for watching. I really hope that this helps somebody out there.